So isn't that crazy how just something as simple as can affect your trigger pull so much? I never saw that coming. So I've been playing with the FN 509 Tactical and the FN 509 Standard. Well, this one isn't really standard, but this was the standard FN 509. However, you know, the barrel and all the internals and the trigger and all that cool stuff is very much OEM. Whereas with the FN 509 Tactical, I have the Apex trigger in it. However, I discovered something about these triggers, and it's very interesting. Both of these triggers, although I've got over 800 rounds in each of these, they're still very gritty. And I'm going to show you guys exactly how to remove that grit without actually having to go out and buy an aftermarket trigger. All right, guys, so I found this weird little trick to make any of your FN 509 or 509 tactical triggers buttery smooth. And it has nothing to do with whether or not you put an aftermarket trigger in it or you're using the OEM trigger that comes with it. And it was really weird because after I got the Apex tactical trigger for the FN 509 tactical, but although the trigger was dramatically improved, it was still, there was some kind of friction inside of it when I would actually pull the trigger, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Like I would feel some kind of drag right here in the take up, and then in the brake, and then also in the reset. So I went through and I polished everything. I thought maybe the rails were dragging. I had no idea. I even polished these, which the Apex replacement parts are already polished, but I went ahead and polished them more. It just really drove me insane. I even went up here into the slide. I polished the striker here, and I polished the plunger safety right here. And still, it was super gritty. The stock trigger is even worse, especially when you first get them. You know, once you put about 500 or 600 rounds through them, they start getting a little bit better, but it was just something that just really was bugging the crap out of me. And so I figured it out, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the trigger and everything to do with the barrel. I know, it's kind of strange, huh? And the way I figured this out was when I would pull the trigger with the gun completely assembled, that's when I would feel the drag. And I'd be like, wow. And then I would take the slide off and I would, you know, push the trigger back and try it, and I had no drag. So I was like really confused. After inspecting it further, and I realized it had everything to do with this front lug on the edge right here. And I don't know if yours is like this or not, but both of my barrels were like this. This edge, almost razor sharp. I was like, well, maybe that's what it is, because when you have this gun assembled, that lug right here actually rests on the top of the trigger shoe. It's very hard to show you, but it's resting on top of the trigger shoe. As you pull this trigger, the top of the shoe is actually rolling like this, and it's rolling against this barrel right here. And if that edge is very sharp and it's rolling against it, then that barrel is essentially cutting into the top of the trigger shoe, at least a little bit. And so here's how I fixed it. I did this very carefully, and I'm not gonna tell you guys to go out and do this because you could very well ruin your barrel doing this. But I took a file and I just went across the edge of this very lightly until that was no longer sharp. It was just nice and smooth. But I just took the file against it very, very lightly. Then I took some sandpaper. This is 400 grit right here. And I just went across the edge even more, just to get that sharp edge just taken off. Well, anyways, once I got that all taken down, I then put it back into the gun and tested it, and it was a lot smoother. And I was like, well, how can I make it even more smooth? And I don't know if this is actually in FN's, you know, cleaning and lubrication guide. I just put a tiny dab of lube right here on this lug right there. And that was it. I mean, you also put lube down in here and up here as well, but I just made sure to put a little bit of lube on it. I put it back together, and then when I put it back on my gun, it was a night and day difference. Now, I will say the Apex trigger is definitely a game changer, but that grit, there was just something that felt like friction inside the trigger pull, and now it's buttery smooth. Very nice. Let's do just a quick trigger pull test. I wanted to see what the difference is between stock and between the Apex trigger. I mean, I really enjoy Apex triggers. I mean, if anyone that watches this channel knows, I like them in my Glocks and my M&Ps. There's a few people that don't like the Glock ones, but for the M&Ps, everyone loves them. Let's go over to stock trigger first, and then we'll take a look at the Apex trigger. So, take up, break, reset. The reset is still a little bit rough on the stock trigger, but the break is so much cleaner now that we got that barrel cleaned up. That feels like it's probably close to 4.5, maybe 5 pounds. Let's try it. I'm gonna pull it towards the bottom of the shoe. So yeah, it's about a 5.5 pound pull. Now on the tactical version here, I got the Apex trigger. Let's see what that one pulls at. So that one was right at 4.5 pounds. A solid pound in differences, but I will say this one feels a lot lighter just because of how short, I mean, look, I mean, that's the break. There's the reset and the break. Whereas on the stock one, you can see how much more farther the travel is. But nonetheless, this little trick will still make your stock trigger feel amazing in the hand. It's just not, it's not gonna be to the level of the Apex, but if the Apex is something that you guys are interested in, just follow the first link in the video description back up top. So isn't that crazy how just something as simple as a very like sharp edge on the edge of a barrel lug can affect your trigger pull so much? I never saw that coming. So I took these out to the range just to make sure that everything was gonna run right. And as you can see, they both run flawlessly. A couple of things that I want to kind of talk about real quick about this. Now, although the trigger has been dramatically improved with the stock trigger, it still doesn't hold a candle to the Apex trigger. Basically, this trigger will do the same thing for the FN 509 that it does for the Smith & Wesson M&Ps. And if anyone has ever tried the Smith & Wesson M&Ps, you're in for a treat if you use the Apex flat triggers. But I really want to know from you, have you ever experienced this with your FN 509? Was your trigger gritty when you first got it? Did it smooth out over time, or is it still gritty? Because I got both of these guns from separate places at separate times. However, they both suffered from a gritty trigger. So I don't know if that's a problem on FN's part, or maybe I just got bad luck. But hey, if you didn't like this video, just hit the dislike button twice. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Subscribe if you're not already. And until next time, guys, I love you, and you guys stay sexy.